So welcome back to our third segment on the Katha Upanishad. Now, when we last left our friends Nachiketas and Yama, the god of death, Nachiketas had just used the third of his three wishes to ask for knowledge about what happens after death. So now Yama has to kind of spill all his secrets about what happens when someone dies, and also what happens to that part of you that doesn't die, namely the Atman, the self, the soul. These teachings are going to come in 5 different chapters in the Katha Upanishad, chapters 2 through 6, and what we're going to do is read through them in the next 3 segments of our session, and I'll point out passages and ideas that are interesting to me. If you're inspired and find other nuggets, please feel free to point those out as well. Now, Death starts his teachings by explaining that he was just testing Nachiketas to make sure that the boy was a suitable student, and he praises him for being an excellent student. The good is one thing, he says. The gratifying is quite another. Their goals are different, but both bind the man. Right? Good things await him who picks the good. By choosing the gratifying, one misses one's goal. Both the good and the gratifying present themselves to a man. The wise assesses them, notes their difference, and chooses the good over the gratifying. Right? But the fool chooses the gratifying rather than what's beneficial. Really, there's just so many kind of lessons, I think, in the Katha that we can apply to our world today. You have looked at and rejected, Nachiketas, things that people desire that are lovely and lovely to look at. This disk of gold, where many a man founders, you have not accepted as a thing of wealth. Now Yama makes an important distinction between those who are knowledge seekers and those who just stay ignorant. Immortality, he says, is only open to those who seek and gain knowledge. Far apart and widely different are these two, ignorance and what's called knowledge. I take Nachiketas as yearning for knowledge, that the many desires do not confound you. Now keep this next verse kind of in your minds, because not only is it amazing as a verse, but also because we're going to see exactly the same verse again when we get to the Bhagavad Gita. Wallowing in ignorance, but calling themselves wise, thinking themselves learned, the fools go around staggering about like a group of blind men, led by a man who is himself blind. Wow, that's some powerful stuff, right? It doesn't stop there, though. Yama explains that the ignorant are the ones who get caught up in death and rebirth. The transit lies hidden from the careless fool who is deluded by the delusion of wealth. Thinking this is the world, there is no other, he falls into my power again and again. Many do not get to hear of that transit, and even when they hear, many don't comprehend it. Rare is the man who teaches it, lucky is the man who grasps it. Rare is the man who knows it, lucky is the man who's taught it. Death now is going to talk about this transit of the soul after death, right? After the death of the body. He says that it's something hard to figure out on your own. Instead, you have to find a really good teacher, a guru, to teach it to you. Let's see what Yama says about this. Though one may think a lot, right, it's difficult to grasp when it's taught by an inferior man. Yet one cannot gain access to it unless someone else teaches it to you. For it's smaller than the size of an atom, a thing beyond the realm of reason. One can't grasp this notion by argumentation, yet it's easy to grasp when taught by another. You're truly steadfast, my dear boy. You've grasped it. Would that we have, Nachiketas, someone like you to question us. So with that out of the way, those kind of honorifics out of the way, Death now spends some time going through various teachings about what the self, the Atman, really is, and how we can recognize it or realize it. Right? Here's what he says. The primeval one, who's hard to perceive, wrapped in mystery, hidden in the cave, resides within the impenetrable depth. Regarding him as God, an insight gained by inner contemplation, the wise abandon both sorrow and joy. When a mortal has heard it and understood it, when he has drawn it out and grasped this subtle point of doctrine, then he rejoices, for he's found something in which he can rejoice. To him I consider my house to be open, Nachiketas. So in other words, someone with this kind of self-understanding is free to leave death's house whenever he wants to. Right? Now Yama changes his subjects. He explains that this Atman is the same as that Brahman, which is also the same as the syllable Om. The word that all the Vedas disclose, the word that all austerities proclaim, seeking which people live student lives. The word I will now tell you in brief, it is Om. For this alone is the syllable that's Brahman. This alone is the syllable that's supreme. When indeed one knows this syllable, he obtains every wish. That is the support of that's best. This is the support supreme. And when one knows this support, he rejoices in Brahman's world. So let's take a moment here to contemplate Yama's proposal. It's pretty deep. He's saying that all the Vedas can be totally reduced to just one syllable, Om. It's a radical mysticism of the highest order. He's saying basically that that entire Vedic Brahminical ritual industrial complex that we talked about for the last 2 weeks, right, can all be captured by just one syllable, which is fully equal to Brahman itself, and then which anyone can learn, right? Isn't that incredible? He explains now the nature of how Atman is the same Om, right? The wise one, he is not born, he does not die, he has not come from anywhere, he has not become anyone. He is unborn and eternal, primeval and everlasting. He is not killed when the body is killed. If the killer thinks that he kills, if the killed thinks that he is killed, both of them fail to understand he neither kills nor is killed. By the way, all of these lines are going to be plagiarized again in the Gita as well. Finer than the finest, larger than the largest is the self, the Atman that lies here hidden in the heart of a living being. Without desires and free from sorrow, a man perceives by the Creator's grace the grandeur of the self. Sitting down, he roams afar. Lying down, he goes everywhere. The God ceaselessly exulting, who besides me is able to know? Yama now finishes off his lessons about this Atman by explaining what happens when you realize that the self lies inside your body. When he perceives this immense, all-pervading self as being bodiless within bodies, as stable within stable, unstable beings, a wise man ceases to grieve. This self cannot be grasped by teachings, or by intelligence, or even by great learning. Only the man he chooses can grasp him, whose body this self chooses as his own. Not a man who has not quit his evil ways, nor a man who is not calm or composed, nor even a man who is without a tranquil mind could ever secure it by his mere wit. So in other words, you have to let the Atman find you, right? You have to let it allow you to understand it. You can't just go and understand it. Now here's Yama's final line, and it's also a really powerful one. It's also going to find itself in the Gita. For whom the Brahman and the Kshatriya are both like a dish of boiled rice, and death is like the sprinkled sauce, who truly knows where he is? This is an interesting verse for actually two reasons. One, like I said, we're going to find it again told by Krishna in the Gita, but also it provides a kind of site for radical questioning of caste hierarchy. Right? Both the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas are like boiled rice for the Atman. In other words, we're all the same when it comes to our Atman, to our soul. It doesn't really matter what caste you are, what gender, what age, what economic level, what languages you speak, the color of your skin, and all of these differences that seem to matter so much to us. The Upanishads were producing this kind of progressive, radical thinking at the same time as they were also embedding these little bits of propaganda that we saw that say that Brahmins should always be honored with food and hospitality. And this kind of duality of them is exactly what makes them kind of complicated to figure out, and it's hard to know exactly what these thinkers were trying to do back then and there. Anyway, with this line, chapter 2 draws to a close, and now Death moves on to talk about specific topics that are going to help clarify the nature of this Atman and how we can release it from the mortal trap of our bodies. He's going to use a few interesting metaphors, including one that compares the body to a chariot, and another that says your Atman is actually the little thumb-sized man sitting in your heart. And he's also going to teach Nachiketas some yoga. So we'll see all of that in our next two segments, so stay tuned.